crossover to happen on YouTube. It says we're live. Hello, we are live, everyone. Here for season 3, episode 14, with both my compadre Rusty as well as special guest Bill Bouchon.
Howdy, Bill. Can you hear me over there?
Testing. Hey, Bill. Can you hear us?
Right. Yep, I can hear you.
Perfect.
That was your cue to say something.
So, all right. So we had a brief introduction offline before we got started, but just for how's everybody doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing good.
Yeah, I'm doing good too. Yeah, healthy.
Excellent. That's the important thing. And as we talk about Musty drinks later,
it's like it wouldn't be true. We'll get to that in a second because it's German Beer Day.
That's right. I was going to say, as Bill had mentioned, it is German Beer Day today, and so I guess as our special guest tonight, Bill, what have you been up to lately?
Well, I've been painting animals for long rifle miniature games by 2-hour war games, and just different woodland creatures to hunt. Like a stag. I'm not sure if turkey. Don't want to bore you.
Yeah.
Here I am. Squirrel.
Squirrel.
Yep. And a bear. There. Yeah. Oh.
That's cool.
And then
that's the Chicago Bears.
Oh. Then I got distracted and started doing something. Growing a fish.
There you go. What's that from?
It's from this company out in Poland. I forget the name of the company. They do a whole bunch of Japanese samurai type of mythological stuff. So
is it mainly just models, or is it for games too? Like, is it for a specific game?
I don't know actually. I thought the models looked neat, so I picked up a few.
That's cool. Have you been? I've seen that you put up videos on long rifle. Have you been doing? What have you been doing? Any gaming lately, or no?
Oh yeah, I've been. Actually, last weekend I did a game with my wife. She got guilted into playing a game with me because I haven't been gaming a while. And we did a Muskets and Mohawks game, which is not Muskets and Tomahawks. It's a different rule set, but it allows for cooperative games as well as head-to-head. So decided, well, since my wife is not experienced in wargaming, a cooperative would probably be more of a ease into it type of thing, so she won't be upset with the game. Yeah. Right.
Well, you assume that. I know I played Infinity with my daughter lately, and she's beaten me several times. So, so what about I understand that you brought a Musty drink tonight in honor of the show.
I realized I don't have any beer in my stocks. I don't go out that often these days because of the thing going on. So I made myself an old-fashioned.
Sweet. Awesome. Cool. How about you, Punisher? What's up with you lately?
Oh,
yeah. Well, there's only one Punisher in the room.
I'll just be
Mr. Freeze
for a while.
That's right.
Well, it's been obviously pretty quiet. If you've been following my channel any, you know that I've been doing a little bit of solo wargaming with Wargaming. Yeah. Then I've been working on some miniatures. If, like I was saying, if I had about 30 more minutes, I would have these guys done.
Ah, nice.
So all I have to do with these guys is the bases. I have all the long grass tufts and stuff everywhere sporadically put on them.
Mm-hmm.
So all I have to do is just now flock the rest of it.
Great. Love seeing all those red coats lined up. That's sweet.
Yeah, so that will be the 33rd Foot Regiment. And then I'll start in on the light bobs. So
Sorry, you'll start it on which?
The light bobs.
Oh, okay.
The light infantry guys.
Uh-huh.
So I'll have those, start working on them, and we'll, whenever this, sometime this summer, Dan Booman and I will get together and we'll have a game going.
Nice.
And maybe by that time I'll have all my red coats finished up. So I'll have a pretty large force of Hessians and red coats.
And you've been gaming some board games lately, I've seen.
Yeah, let's see, the one that's right there. That's as you can see, it's all boxed up now. I finished it. I finished it up Friday, I think it was, or whatever day it was, Friday or Saturday. I think it was Saturday. And I played that for, finally, I just like the turns started going faster and faster because, well, one side started getting its butt kicked a little bit more. So their turns were a lot quicker. So I was just burning through that. And the last video should be up either Monday or Tuesday.
Cool. Awesome.
And I'm not giving anything away, but if you've been watching or following any of it, you probably know what the end result will be. But I won't give away when it happened.
No big surprises. So what you brought a musty drink to the show tonight? Tell us about that.
This is homebrew, my own. I cracked this or brewed this up. This is a German alt beer.
Cool. For German Beer Day.
Yeah, for German Beer Day. I was going to bring rum tonight, but whoosh. Smells good. So we'll canter it off into this nice little glass. The glass says, beer is proof that God loves us and wants us to be happy. Benjamin Franklin. This was from Philadelphia.
Outstanding.
So is that a light colored one or a dark?
This is alt beers are dark.
Okay. There you go. Yes, very dark, actually.
Yeah, but very tasty.
All right, sweet, cool. Well,
Yummy.
My gaming lately has primarily been Infinity with my daughter. I haven't been doing too much gaming around other than that. And like I mentioned, I have won a game, but actually when teaching her the rules, she's kind of kicked my butt a bit. It's like at the end of the day, you get into some firefights and it's like you roll on those 20-sided dice. And if they, sometimes you just don't win. It's just the way it is. Although, I will say that I did teach her something because we were going straight up at each other. I don't know. Actually, I know both of you guys have played Infinity. I've talked to both of you guys about Infinity. Bill actually had a video recently showing his Hak Islam. I showed her how you have to keep your eyes on where the enemy can be coming because she basically had some better quality troops. Like we didn't have it totally even. It was sort of. She was using my Pano and like. Some of her troops were a little bit better, but I basically outflanked her, and so her enemies couldn't even see me. I basically just went around her back and then just outflanked her. And when after I died, I showed her some tactics, and then I did win. But that's just to teach, right? Like that's part of Infinity. It's so tactical that like you have to make sure your guys have line of sight for different pathways and directions. Otherwise, somebody can creep up on you pretty quickly. And so that was fun, actually. Like not only losing and seeing her win and enjoy it, like that was fun because I always try. I mean, I still tried. but then also doing some teaching and like, some fun games like that too. And so, yeah, like that, I've been doing that. And I painted the Spider-Man model up, and I've been working in MODOK, and I've been working on my French Indian War stuff. I haven't been going too crazy lately with the painting. A lot of my time with the kids at home and stuff has not been as productive as I'd like it to be. But I did just get some blue to just show my color scheme that I've got right now. See here, you guys should be able to see that. Okay, I have it's just basically I'm doing the Marines are very close to, you can't see it too well, I realize it's far off, but this would be my my actual finished officer for Languedoc, and you can see it's quite blue and white, and Marines are very much like that, although they have the Indian garb leggings, but they actually have blue pants essentially, where the like the Languedoc didn't. So it's just a subtle difference. They still basically match up pretty well. Both where they do have cuffs have blue cuffs. So I'm just I got to work on skin tones and gear and guns tomorrow, and then they're really going to start taking shape. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting some progress on that tomorrow, because we've got a bit of an announcement tonight that we're going to talk about that I want to actually be progressing on my current projects for a future project that's coming up. And yeah, so that's kind of what I'm doing on the painting table. I don't think I'll, even though I said I wouldn't be doing the Spider-Man for a while, that I'll be doing these Canadian Marines, and then I just finished the Spider-Man as I was waiting for the putty and the primer to dry. I think I'll do Ultron next for the Marvel stuff, but this definitely might be a little while, because I think I have another project after these that we're going to announce later, joint project that I'm going to do before that. So for my German beer, I've got Phillips, and actually I think I said earlier this was a Calgary beer, but actually this is a Canadian beer, but Phillips is not Calgary. This one I believe is BC, yeah, Victoria, BC, not Calgary. So yeah, and I think this guy Kolsch is a lighter beer.
Yes, it's a very light beer.
Yeah, and so yeah, that's this guy here. So hopefully not too
Kolsch
foamy.
is one of my favorite lawnmower beers.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
All right. Looks like we have some different folks joining us in the house tonight. We've got
Paul's
Mel.
in the house.
Yeah, Mel
And
Stryker, Todd, and Paul P. Beckus. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Hello, everyone.
Let me switch over to the cam here. All right. So everybody up on the screen. So yeah, so we have two topics tonight. They're sort of dual headlining topics. And the first one we usually have a special guest topic we're going to do next. But the first one, we just want to have a bit of a chat about. There's been we did a bit of a COVID chat last time, but it was just sort of we wanted to just talk about how are people doing as far as their enthusiasm and productivity during this time and this life change within COVID. I think that I'm seeing a lot of stuff on Facebook and on YouTube that really you can't quite tell. I mean, some people are using the time. It seems like they're using time quite well, like they're maybe digging out miniatures they haven't painted, or looking at rule sets that they just have up, in the shelf because they're at home and they have all this time, maybe to read and explore the rule sets. But I'll just be quite honest, for myself, I've not been as productive. Now, my work hasn't really changed because I do work in healthcare, and so my work has been similar. But also, I would say that's not the main issue. I would say I'm less productive now, probably more because my kids are at home all the time. And I am helping a little bit, with them with schoolwork and setting up for video stuff with them. And they're just, always around, more family at home. And so that's been part of it. But I'm not actually going to blame it just on the kids and just that stuff. I think part of it, too, is when it first all started, I was a little bit in shell shock, like just about everything that was going on. And so my mind was always just thinking about things like, do I need to be what do I need to be doing and trying to get? Like, what do I need to do? And I realize there's been a lot of talk about not hoarding and things like that, but that doesn't mean I don't still think about, like, what does this mean? Like, what should I be doing? Like, should I be doing anything? And so you're just spending a lot more time thinking about things and going on, maybe family, like that you're not with and you can't see right now or something like that. And so I think I suspect I'm not the only one that's just, at times just has headspace that is being filled that you didn't have before, being filled with things. And so what that's done is it's forced me to, I've still maintained current projects that I've been painting and I've still been working on them. But I would say that I've not dived in nearly as productively as I have in the past, even though, like I've had time to do it at times. And so it's not really like a time issue per se. And so who'd like to go first on that? What do you guys think about it?
Well, I have to say things haven't really changed too much for me, because my kids are adult, it's just my wife and I. My son lives here, but, he works nights, so he's not around. During the day, he's usually sleeping. So when it comes to productivity, I basically, when I had the Guns of August game out, I had a hard time trying not to spend all my time playing it. I wanted to stretch it out a little bit. So every time I walked by the board, which was right behind, where I was working my painting sessions, so I'd be like, oh, okay, I need to walk by, keep on walking type of thing. And so when it comes to productivity, I haven't had too much of a difference other than I've been enjoying doing some solo stuff. So,
but you have had family members that are now at home full time that weren't before, right?
My wife was home. She's a teacher, but she's back to work now.
Oh, okay.
The kids are still home, they're not going back to school, so they're doing online schooling now. And she's been spent the last week getting all the computers and stuff to pass out to the students. So every student will have a computer, a laptop. So they've been getting that all ready for all the kids, and they started passing them out. I think today was the first day they started doing that. So it's been kind of nice as she hasn't been around. I've been enjoying it a lot more.
So when you actually had that change in lifestyle, when more people are at home, did that affect your hobbying much, or?
To some extent, because when she was home, she was every day they were doing live streams, basically what we were doing, but they were interacting with other teachers all the time. So she was sucking up the bandwidth, and which makes it hard because when we're doing a live stream, no one's on the internet but me at the moment. So when she was doing hers, I was like, okay, I tell her not to be on, so I guess I can't really be on. So I spent a lot of time with my phone using cellular. It was like sitting off to the side. It was like having this little screen over here trying to watch videos, and then getting on there until, okay, answer, get back to work type of thing, which is a little more annoying because usually I had a big iPad that I watch stuff on. Right. I couldn't use it. So it was like once people would be showing stuff, or you have a bat rep or something going on, you're like, I can't really tell what's going on. It's like your 15 mil miniatures look like specks. I'm not really sure what I'm looking at, but that's pretty much what my extent of what was going on for during that time. It was about 3 weeks worth of period there, or 3 or 4 weeks, I guess.
How about you, Bill?
I'd like to say I was productive, but I'm not. The only days I was productive is when I took off from work, because I was working. I've been working from home all this time, and my wife has been working from home, and so I don't get very much time to work on projects and stuff like that, because when she's off, I'm off, and she wants to be entertained. Yeah, she's out getting some errands done, but right now, thank goodness. But it's been a little of an adjustment.
Sure.
So occasionally I get to paint when I get her to watch the TV. So then I can dive into painting, and then this last weekend, for the first time in ages, I was able to actually get her to play a war game with me. So that was actually a success that has not come for 17 years. So
do you think there'll be another one sooner?
maybe. Yeah. The thing is, I haven't had a moment's time to edit the video for that battle report of that video. So I don't know when I'm going to be able to do that because I don't have time. But it's the adjustment.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, for me, like I said, I kind of mentioned in the beginning, a lot of it has been just thinking about other things. Like it's been having people at home, and we all talk about at times, even in the best of times, we don't always do the stuff we want to do as far as hobbying. I mean, like even when life is in the normal, like so to speak, people will talk about, not painting enough, or like getting themselves to paint, or having like a burnout or a hobby burnout, or like things like that, like just not necessarily always being at your peak enthusiasm. But I think when you layer this over it, for some people, at least like for myself, I found it more challenging to really think about sitting down and painting. To be honest, I have no problem with like watching. I watched The Terror recently on Netflix, like the whole series of the HMS Terror and Erebus. It's like a horror. It's not actually on Netflix. It's on Amazon Prime. But it was basically a historical fiction / mythological kind of show, and it was pretty cool. But I easily binged through that. I could easily like kind of decompress and do that. But then at times I just found it more difficult to think about doing another stage, like a project in my hobby room, like for painting. And part of it, I do blame kind of on this. Like I've always kind of had times where I'm more eager to paint than other times. But then if I layer on other stuff, like more people in the house, more distractions, stuff going on that I'm thinking about, then it just makes it, for me, even a little harder to get things done.
Yeah, I could see where, some people would have a lot of issues. There were a few times for like, I'd be sitting there trying to work, it's like she'd come down after her, she'd have her little staff meeting, and she'd come down and it's like, like, hello, I don't come to your job site and start talking in your ear, do I? It's like, go away.
Yeah.
Type of thing. But, she needed to vent, it's like, okay, clean the brush off, put it down. Yes. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is that all? Okay.
So it looks like Curtis has joined us as well. He's asked what the topic is tonight. So we are going to have two topics like usual tonight. We were just having an introductory, starting with just kind of like how productive and enthusiastic people have been just within the current scenario. We've got a bunch of comments. I think I'm just going to go up and just kind of start throwing some of these up there. We'll get through the howdy and the highs first. But then looks like Todd, Internet Hobbyist, says, I've played a few more games, and he also says, I've listened to a few more audiobooks. And so that's definitely good, getting some, gaming being part of the hobby. And I definitely, like I mentioned, have been doing more as far as watching shows and things like that.
Yeah, I've been listening to, during when I couldn't use my internet, I was listening to Outlander series.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been listening to all of that stuff. My wife's really big into the TV show, so I've been listening to the books. So.
Mm-hmm.
Not bad stuff.
Yeah, my wife is very much deep into the Outlander show too. So
it's nice thing I like about it is it's historical. There's some historical stuff because like when you see the outfits, you're like, what kind of outfit has he got on there? It's like, what's that uniform look like? I wonder if I could replicate that on something. That's kind of like how I look at it.
Yep.
So.
Striker says, I've been taking a break really, but I'm getting the itch to paint again. And that's kind of me too. Like I at times will go through phases where I kind of don't, but then it builds up and I just really get the enthusiasm to get into the project again. And P. Becca says, I've watched a lot of YouTube.
It's kind of a captive audience there, though.
Robbie says, when I was working during this, I was busier with work and mentally exhausted. But now that I'm furloughed, I have some mental energy to do some hobby stuff. Striker says, yeah, that's where I'm at too. Lots of free movies I've never seen since this COVID thing. Let's see here, talking about seeing
my comment about trying to watch stuff on my phone.
Okay, so I'm just gonna go down here. Okay,
Yeah, Curtis,
I think we got through most of them on the topic ones here.
Yeah, Curtis was doing he had those British Airborne, the Red Devils. He was working on those too at the same time. So I could tell they're Red Devils because they had the berets. That was the only, it's like about the extent of the good details I could see a lot of times.
Well, yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, I thought that might be an interesting topic to talk about for one of the topics, but I don't know what you guys think. Maybe we should just kind of lead into our second one.
Well, I have to say one of the things that it leads into a lot of our next topic is that when you're not able to spend a lot of time playing with because you are, a lot of our topics are about gaming with other people, the social interaction, the social contract with people. And then when we have that removed, we're sitting there trying to figure out what can we do to change that kind of stuff, right? And so when you're locked up in the house, I don't know the number of times I suggested to my wife and my son, hey, we got a lot of board games around here. Let's play some board games, that type of stuff. And they're like, look at me going. My son was like, well, if you can get your mom to play, I'll play. And it's like, and my wife was like, I'm not in the mood. I'm too busy. Like, you're home. Where are you going? Like, take a time off. Let's go. Let's go play a game. But no.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's true. I've actually played some Zombicide. I didn't list that. I was thinking miniature games, but I've played Zombicide with the family, and we do that too, where it's like, okay, 3 out of the 4 of us will play, but the condition is we get the 4th to play, and then you have to guilt the 4th into playing, just to get everybody together to have a family night.
Yeah, that's a lot of times. It's like when it's a family unit, it's like, I'm the big gamer in the household. My son's a gamer, but sometimes he is one of those types that it takes a lot to motivate him. Once he wants to play, he's like, oh, hey, let's play, type of thing. Yeah. My wife is like, fine, all right, I'll go do something. It's like she just rather sit there and, this is my wife a lot of time. She's
perfect timing. Perfect timing. Well,
my wife is very much a enthusiastic gamer, but not a war gamer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So she is very deep into board games.
Mm-hmm.
So over the past couple of weeks, I don't know how many times I've played Concordia or Eldritch Horror or all sorts of board games. But not war games.
Cool. That's cool.
So she likes the kind of what we call like the Eurotrash type games, that stuff.
The Euro games, the Ameritrash games.
Yeah.
She jumps all over the place. So yeah, she's very much a.
So that's her style of board game.
That's her. Yeah. So that's so.
Yeah, it's like I'm more of a historical style board gamer. That's the kind of stuff I like to play, and then it moves into the Ameritrash, Eurotrash type games. Because I've gotten into playing those because that's what the family likes to play. It's like, hey, let's play Ticket. They'll say, let's play Ticket to Ride. okay.
Right.
Or Catan or something like that type of thing. So
Yeah.
yeah.
She loves deck building games and stuff like that too. So
Now we got the one. It's we got what the heck is that one called? It's a fantasy one where you have the city where you got to build the city up and type of deal. I can't remember what the heck is this thing. What's that?
Dominion?
No.
Okay.
I could run over and grab it real quick, but that means I have to escape.
Striker says, I get the cold dead stare when I ask my wife if she wants to play a game. We don't have board games anymore as we got rid of them. And I would say that I got to give my wife a fair shake because I could really because what I would say is that what she mostly does is plays these games on a phone that usually like where you're blowing up bubbles and there's like diamonds and like Tetris and like all kinds of crazy things, like those kind of games that you just play like on the phone. Like they're huge. I mean, like gaming in general like used to be so dominated by men, but when they incorporated all of these phone app games into the grand picture, women I think play even more games than men now. I think when they actually looked at it. But my wife, when I introduced her to Zombicide, really quite likes it now, and she loves the family interaction in the game, and so we do really have a lot of fun. But even we're not a huge board gaming family, but we have one called Primordial Soup. It's a game, and it's like you're all like bacteria and have to evolve, and like we had fun. Like she enjoys the board games when we pull them out, and I think like a big deal of it is just getting everybody together and having fun. Strikers, So then P. Becca says my wife doesn't play any board games. She'd rather play Crash Bandicoot on the Xbox, and so so video games are quite big. I mean, I can just like board games, so I could definitely see that.
Yeah.
Looks like we have Victor from Big Miniatures joined. Hello, Victor.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
my wife is usually these little mind spinner type games where you're trying to little bubbles going off, trying to smash stuff. And it's like
that's the same.
Like, why are you wasting your life on that stuff? It's like if you're gonna play games, play a game. It's like, that's not a game.
This is not tactical.
No, there's nothing tactical about it. So that's kind of how I look at it. It's like when you're all locked up, it's like, and she's just like, why are you looking over my shoulder? And I was like, trying to figure out why you're doing this.
I could easily see you, Rusty, saying, is there any way you can improve the surface tension on the bubble?
You do realize if you do half a degree a little more this way, you get more kills with that way. It's my game. Let me do it my way.
So this next topic we have talked about before, and I'm going to actually let Bill introduce it, but we're going to call it Solo Wargaming Revisited, and sort of just some little bit more discussion. And in the current environment, now that a lot of folks are at home and don't have the other option, might be interesting just to talk about it again. And I'm just going to let Bill kind of open that up.
Well, now that we're a captive audience at home, we can play with ourselves, so to speak. It sounds bad, but solo wargaming is a thing that a lot of people don't ever realize they can do. And you look through the miniature choices, and there's just a few companies that actually focus on miniature solo wargaming, like the 2 Hour War Games and some of the fantasy role-playing type of companies, D100 or something of that nature. But it's an opportunity to explore that area of the wargaming. And what I find interesting about it is I get to do campaign gaming, linked games from one game to another. I'm at a point in my life where I can't schedule friends to meet on a regular basis to do a campaign type of game. And this is a kind of a revisiting of a campaign type of setting because of the fact that I can wargame by myself and schedule it whenever I want, and then I just write down where I was, and then I can just continue from where I'm at.
Mhm.
It's actually an opportunity when I can war game. It's if I have the time. But it's also given me another opportunity too to set up, for instance, with the muskets and mohawks. They have by 2 Hour War Games has a you can play it solo. But you can also play it cooperative. And so I was able to actually twist my wife's arm, and she agreed to play. And so I got to play a cooperative game with her against the game itself, which she found less stressful because she doesn't like to go head to head with those type of games, because she feels that my decades of wargaming have an advantage, but she doesn't realize that I roll ones all the time. So it doesn't matter.
So what would be like, I don't want to put you on the spot with this, but just like if you had to rattle off a few miniature-based war games that you're either playing right now because of the time, or you're intending on trying out because you've thought about it, what would be a few within your collection that come to your mind?
Well, right now I've been actively playing a game called Long Rifle, and that's a focused in man-to-man skirmish game for your French and Indian War period. So you're talking about at the most 5 models on total on the table. Uh, you're not talking about full units fighting against each other. You're talking about you have one or two guys going out into the forest and having encounters. Like they have missions where you can go hunting for a game. You can go out to do a raid mission on a wigwam or settlement or something like that. Not a full settlement, but like a building or two. Or you can do even and I haven't tried it yet, but I want to try it, a canoe race, chase mission with canoes. I want to do that and see how that works out.
I've seen a movie that actually has a scene like that. Last of the Mohicans.
So it's the scenarios you don't really get to play.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah, and they tie together based on what happens in the previous mission. Will be based on what your reputation will be in the next missions, and what type of bennies or negatives will happen. Which is interesting to tally up the campaign. I do intend on reading the 5150, which is also a 2 Hour War Games game.
Great Van Halen album too.
and it's their science fiction, and I since they have it's a solo wargaming for not just ground combat, but they have books for your skirmish fighter pilots and also big Navy. So I was thinking, since I have a ton of X-wing miniatures, maybe I can do some use that system to do.
Is that a 15? Is it primarily made for 15 mil? That or no?
Well, it's made for whatever scale you want to play with.
Okay, I was just curious because I've heard of that. I've actually been looking into games and came across it at one point. I wasn't sure if it was when I was looking into 15 mil sci-fi or if it was 28 mil, like primarily made for.
They even have like a little cutouts in the book. I got the PDFs, and then you print it out and you can cut out the little markers, and then you can have chits on the table if you want. But what's the fun of that,
So how about you, Rusty? What are your thoughts on solo wargaming lately? I know you're doing some of it, but in addition to some of the stuff you're doing, thoughts on like top miniature games that you like to play or haven't played and want to play that you might want to try solo too?
Well, right now, just like you said, I've been working on board games. It seems like board games are a lot easier to solo war game. But as Paul here said, it's hard not to have a bias sometimes. It's just my experience right now. It's like I just got done playing the Guns of August game, and I tried to go into each turn as looking at it from the aspect of what's the best thing for my army, what achievements can I get, what are the victory conditions, and weighing, and it's like, okay, can I win with this? Am I just doing a delaying, or try to push them back? And it's try not to have a bias. It's like, but after 30 years of playing, or 30 something, almost 40 years playing that game, it's like I know how to win with both sides. What are the conditions? And the only variables in the entire game were who joins what side. Mm-hmm. And it's like when it's like that one game, it's like, oh crap, the Italians just joined the Central Power. All right, this is going to make things a lot harder for the Allies, because it's one of those things where, okay, all right, I have to rearrange my forces. Now these guys are a threat. They're going to throw stuff elsewhere. I have to get into the mindset. What do I have to do to, go, take care of this stuff? But that the hard thing about solo war gaming is taking one side out, pull the cassette out, and say, all right, now I'll put the new cassette in. I now pull that cassette out, put the new one in. Now I'm France. It's hard. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to miniature games, that is something that was going to be kind of different for me, because I don't think I've ever solo war gamed miniature games other than like play testing the rules and stuff like that. It's like where you have some mechanics you're trying to figure out. It's like, okay, if I do this, okay. After playing a few turns, it's like, okay, now I think how that mechanic's supposed to work. So I can't really think about playing a solo miniature game probably for a couple weeks now. Mm-hmm. Because if I turn it, you can see it right there, that big table right there. That's the Empires and Alliance game that I set up. So,
cool.
So that is going to go into action. Probably start playing it tomorrow. Mm-hmm. But I haven't officially started because I wanted to get the first unit of my. If you showed up late to the show, I've been working on these guys. I wanted to get one unit done because I wanted to get them done for facing off with Dan sometime. Mm-hmm. But
keep rounding out your forces for AWI.
Yeah. So that is something I might even consider here, is one that I could actually do small skirmishes. I remove all the Battletech miniatures and books right behind me and move Supergirl from probably over here. I will have a small area where I could maybe do a small game, mm-hmm. do some little play testing or just figure out some stuff. Because I've been watching a few channels where they've been doing the solo miniature war gaming. And it's got, it's like, it's kind of nice to be able to do that, even if you don't have an opponent. Which I found out when I started playing the board game, that some guys were like, why don't you play that in Vassal? I'm like, Vassal? It's like you can play, I guess you can play board games now online, so with other people. So
and we it's similar to what we talked about. I mean, as I understand it, Vassal isn't as complex as some of the new software that we showed in the last show, where they were playing Infinity, and they have all these other games too, where it's all looks three-dimensional and things. But Vassal's been around a long time, though. Actually, it's almost like taking miniatures and playing them like a board game in some ways. It's funny though, Curtis has joined us, and he was been on the show, and the main topic is actually solo wargaming, and he's been doing it for a long time and advocating for a long time. And now that like we're in this COVID environment, and so many people are talking about it, he's probably like, "I told you so." It's a lot of fun, actually.
You guys thought I was a fool. Welcome to the club.
Right, but like from my perspective, I only really have one game right now that I want to try solo, and that's Sharp's Practice. And I haven't played enough Sharp's Practice. I've actually played it with friends a couple of times when I first got it, and then I got into other things, and I just really didn't get enough games in. And now, even though Musket and Tomahawks has recently come out, my goal is to get a number of Sharp's Practice games in, because I've been painting my French Indian War stuff, both sides, to try to bulk them out to play some bigger games like you can play in Sharp's Practice. And seeing the rules, I really think that overall they're quite conducive with some of the card mechanics and the way that deployment is randomized in some ways, to actually try to build narrative scenarios and to play it a little bit like that. I'm not at all an expert or extremely experienced in solo wargaming, but from my perspective, when I look at it, I think like I could go the heavy narrative route where I'm not playing as competitively and I'm just trying to play a narrative scenario and try how the rules work and see how the rules are conducive in that scenario and generating that scenario happening. And in which case, I'm not worried so much about giving one side an unfair advantage against another. But then on the more competitive side, where you do want to play it sort of more like how we typically would, in my mindset, I was just sort of thinking a lot of it is building out AI to some degree, like using artificial intelligence in some way, even if it's at the most basic level of when I start this game, these are a couple of objectives and perspectives of each army. Like this is what one is trying to achieve. This is what another is trying to achieve. And so I could be playing Sharp's Practice and I could be saying like, this one's defending a homestead and this one's approaching and has, wants to attack it and wants to try to achieve this one thing. And then, besides trying to consider line of sight and information and what side they would really know, I guess just trying to rationalize what would each side do given the information it knows at that time, and just trying to keep that in mind when I'm actually making a decision and not necessarily saying, well, they're going to cut to the right now that they're over there, even though there's a forest between them, but trying to actually, well, what would they really do? They probably wouldn't, if they haven't sent a scout that way, really pursue them that way. Whereas in a game head to head with perfect information, top down, two people looking at it, they certainly would send them through the forest and try to actually attack them. Well, no, in this case, they probably aren't really seeing them and don't have that reconnaissance, let's say. And so I kind of wonder when I play and try to simulate my Sharp's Practice game solo, whether that will work, like trying to create some objectives and look at it from that perspective.
So a couple months ago, I actually tried a solo game of Flames of War. I'm not sure if you guys have played that game. It's World War II, 15 millimeter scale. And I I combined another set of rules to be the engine behind the solo gaming, which was the man who would be king has a solo chapter called playing as Mr. Babbage. And so I had Mr. Babbage play the Soviets. And so I would make the rolls and the Soviets would be generated and would be attacking or doing whatever they need based off of those charts that are there. And it worked pretty good. And Mr. Babbage almost beat me. It came down to a single dice roll at the end. It was crazy.
So what is Mr. Babbage?
It's solo rules in the a man who would be king rules.
So, but what I mean is, so if you're able to transplant that to another game pretty effectively, is it a set of philosophies that you're following that player is going to play? Like, is it randomized charts that you're rolling? Like how would you describe what that is actually?
It's a combination of charts and also rules that the miniatures will have to follow. They have to try it at reasonably try to be in the cover as much as they can up until a point where they can attack. Mr. Badridge usually is set up to be the native. Basically, the man who will be king is like a Victorian wargaming rules.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Badridge is the one that controls the native contingents like Zulus or Fuzzy Wuzzies or whatnot. And so I figured that he would be perfect as a Soviet commander because they're a horde army at the Eastern Front, and it worked perfectly. It fell right into place. And then I read in the rules that Mr. Babbage is based off of another rule system called Pony Wars, which is written a decade before, that I actually happen to have a copy of over in the bookshelf back there.
Mm-hmm.
And I had not realized that. So I looked at those rules too, and I might actually very well do some more solo wargaming with the solo engine, but with some of my favorite wargaming rules like Flames of War or whatnot. So I thought that was actually an advantage.
So some of the frameworks that you got from the Mr. Babbage in the one game, and then also was inspired by the Pony Wars, could you, like, in your mind, take that framework and say, well, instead of it being a horde army, maybe instead of always trying to find cover, it's going to be a different kind of army where they're going to, try to capture the open areas and take over a structure or something like that, like, or you know what I mean, like let's say your rank and file or something. Like, do you think that you could use that framework to try to create other kind of personalities and things like that?
I don't see why you couldn't write your own rules for that to make it that way. Most generic wargaming folks do try to use cover, and sometimes they forget to do that when they're playing a miniature solo game against themselves because they want to give themselves an advantage. But that's all in the game, and you're just playing the rules, and it's actually kind of neat the way it all fell into place. And now the 2-hour war games that I've been playing recently, that actually works like the Infinity rule set, where you have it was called the reaction fire system. I forget the name of the AP. What's the letters that they have for the reaction fire?
Oh, ARO, automatic reaction order.
Yeah, that's it. So it works like that, but on a more advanced level. So you roll on a number of different charts to see what the reaction is, based off of the motivation level of the soldiers. Will be based on whether they'll fire back or whether they'll seek cover or whatnot.
Yeah,
based on when they see you. So
right.
It's a little more in depth with that, and it's so you can literally play a game without even thinking about your opponent. Your opponent does its own thing.
Cool.
Yeah,
that's neat. No, it's funny. I'm a big, for those that are a fan of my channel, if you've watched some of the Heresy Hump Day, the old videos, they'll know that I'm a fan of the movie Papillon, and seen both the new and the old movie. And I like a good chase sometimes in cinema, like where you have somebody trying to escape from prison and like trying to like get off the island or something like that. There's tons of chase movies, and for whatever reason, I never pursued this, but I was looking at writing my own rules and coming up with an AI mechanic where you could basically be having people following you that are miniatures that are AI in the game. And I kind of was developing a string mechanic where you'd have a string that was the path that you ran. And based on who were your captors, or whether they were natives in the jungle and advanced scouts, or whether they were soldiers like from the prison, they would have ability to get a scent, from proximity to the string. and some of it would be randomized as well, and some of it would have advantages based on the type of quality of the actual pursuer. And it's a lot of fun. In some ways, it's all mathematics in the end, right? And it's mathematics. Actually, it's all mathematics. It's not even any doubt about it. It's all based on math. It's all based on probability. On being able to, and so there's a luck element for sure. But then, of course, the game doesn't have to be just that. It can be trying to get away from the pursuers, as well as trying to deal with other obstacles in the game. But it's fun. It is fun to think about AI mechanics.
And
Rusty, what are your? Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Bill.
Another way I do miniature solo mechanics would be to do a fighting against a fortified position, where there is no thought process. And I got this type of wargaming from playing Starfleet Battles back decades ago, where they have the solo games where you're fighting against an object that will maybe erratically move in one way or another, but is pretty much stationary in the middle of the map. But you have the motion, you have the autonomy to move all your miniatures the way you want to get the optimal shots in, and so forth and so on. But the challenge is to take out that fortification in a set number of turns before the game ends, and see if you actually are successful or not. It's just another way of doing a solo game. Sorry to cut you off, Rusty.
Oh, no big deal. I was just typing over here, the chat going on in the side here. It was while you guys were talking, I was like thinking of one game I really need to get started on is I just had it in my head. It just went shooting out. Age of Magic, Saga. Yeah, it's like wow. It was like, yeah, I want to really get started and figure out the mechanics of that. I'm just wondering how to do a Saga game as a solo war game. How hard that would be, since you have a lot of experience with it. So just something that just popped in the old head there.
Well, that's interesting, and I've not really thought about it. It's a game that I do enjoy and play a lot of. The hard thing for me is that there's a lot of resource management in Saga in the form of the battle board. And with the battle board, you really do have to always be thinking what you're going to do throughout the next turn in order how to best maximize a combination of resources and abilities is sort of on the board.
Yeah.
I would have trouble trying to manage two battle boards as well as miniatures on the table for two different sides at the same time. And I'm just not sure that I would personally enjoy that much. I really love Saga, and to be quite honest, I don't know if it's just me, but I get lost when I play it. I'm like looking at the battle board and all the resource management. I'm looking at the board and everything my opponent's doing, and I'm just not sure by like stepping to the other side of the table and doing both sides. Some people may be very successful with that and do it really well, but for me, I might get a little lost in it.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking about that. Was that the amount of resource management that would have to go on it from just what I looked at, it's like you have the dice roll over here, then you got to figure out what you can do with those, right? And then it's like, okay, this is my resources. What can I do with my resources? And then to hide that from yourself, it's like, I know I can do this, and then go over here. I know what you're going to do because I already know what you're going to do. So that's the hardest part about solo wargaming, is trying to step out and not, is like one of the guys here who said it just now, something about cheat. Do people, all right, Curtis, here we go. Do people really cheat when playing solo? I mean, you're really playing both sides full advantage. Why would you not? It's hard not to. It's like when I just went through a whole solo war game, it's like there are times you roll the die and you look over and go, oh crap. I did not want that to happen. But that's what happened. So
yeah.
I just
Well-
like, okay, I got to roll with the punches. It's like in one of the games, it was like I think we're at the point. I have to go look back, and I wasn't sure exactly where in the game where the Germans were just crushing, rolling over the Russians, and then had a whole slew of exchanges where, defender exchange type of thing where those defenders eliminated, but you have to lose just as much tack power as a defender had for defense. And it was like, I just had my entire front, my big offensive juggernaut just fade away. And you're like, well, that's what happened. I don't want it to happen, but it's okay. I just got to roll with the punches.
I'm not sure if Curtis is baiting us with that question, just because I kind of read it as, why wouldn't you? Like, you'd always play both sides to full advantage. But to be quite honest, when we had him on the show talking about solo wargaming, he also brought up how he likes to play it to see a scene and a narrative develop. And sometimes you purposely develop a narrative where one side doesn't have as much of an advantage as the other side. And he's the one that kind of made that rationale on the show, I think, if I remember correctly. And so, Curtis, I would say that, it makes sense. You could play both sides to their full advantage. But then I guess at times, in my mind, even just from talking to you about it, with all your experience doing it, that you want to actually simulate a scenario, whether it be historical or fantasy, doesn't matter, of something happening, and it's not actually symmetrical, it's asymmetric, and so in that case, you just take that for what it is and just have fun with it and just don't worry about it. And so I wonder, sometimes with solo wargaming, I wonder if that's the answer too, is not worrying about things being completely even sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I'd say that's definite, because you can't always get what you want, but you have to. It's like, all right, just like you see when you're reading history, it's like the battle was going great, and all of a sudden something happened where, well, the general that was leading the men got shot, and he goes down, and everybody's like, oh my God, the general's gone, and they suddenly get demoralized and they start running away, all because one guy got killed.
Now, you mentioned earlier.
What's to say? I would say challenge.
Sorry, 1 second, Rusty. Bill, what were you saying?
You mentioned how would you do Saga as a solo war game, and I was just thinking about that, and I would actually do it in a way where you would have the engine activate the units like the Mr. Babbage rules. And then every turn you roll for your Saga dice, and instead of putting those dice towards any activations on the left-hand side of the board, you put the dice exclusively in their special actions. And I would put them on the special actions that are reactive first, and then if there's anything left over, then you put them on the other actions. And then you're compelled to actually use those reactive actions when you play your turn. You know how some of those battle boards are set up. And some of them are more reactive than others, but the more reactive ones would probably be more challenging in a solo scenario.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, it's certainly one way to do it, because you could almost make the argument then that through just focusing on reactive abilities, you're just going to have the two armies fight against each other and just react against each other, right? And so, like, the moment one happens, you're going to spring the reactive ability. But then there's a lot of things where you're deliberately doing combinations of abilities and trying to spring like a combo, right? And I think that's going to be, you can still do it. I mean, like, you're still both playing. I definitely think just any of the games, if you're determined, you can make them solo. And I think what you're saying is very interesting. Is you're using the reactive mechanic potentially in a slightly different way in order to facilitate solo wargaming, which would be interesting. Yeah. It definitely would be focusing on certain aspects of the board a little more than other, potentially, and I don't know. It's interesting. I think it's worth a try.
Sounds like it's almost like you're going to reactive warfare, where it's like thrust and parry the warriors right in their face, right? That's reactive warfare, versus a strategic style warfare, where somebody's in the back, like, let's say, is looking farther down. It's like, okay, you guys are doing this. I'm just waiting for the right moment to pow type thing. Mm-hmm. That's the strategic style, I guess.
Well, that's what you'll be doing as your player, as you're
Yeah.
playing the strategic game. You're looking down the line, but what you're playing against is reactive,
Mhm.
and the odds are stacked against you in reactive sets because those saga dice that would normally be allocated to the left-hand table for the action table. And I'm sorry, I've only played the first edition.
Mhm. Mhm. It's still, there's a lot of it carries over though. Yeah.
But that left-hand table would be ignored because that would be activated on its own. So the reactive would be stacked against you.
Mhm. Yeah, no, it's interesting for sure.
I like what Todd put down here. Like, if you have an AI, it's not necessary. I think of the game Battle Group, where you have to see your target to be able to shoot at it, type thing. If you solo war game that in itself is almost like an AI. It's like you can't necessarily, you have to spot you put that mechanic into the game where it's like, okay, I think there's somebody over here. Oh, I spot or not spot, that type of thing where you're not necessarily going to be constantly shooting at targets.
Mhm.
So I think that's something you can work into a game as a general mechanic for both sides, where fog of war, everything's fog of war.
Yeah.
So you don't necessarily even see the guy hiding behind a tree right in front of your face, type of thing.
Right. The musket and tomahawk spotting mechanic could be helpful as well, in the sense that if you truly follow it, and there's a lot of times that you're not within spotting distance, and even though you see each other and know as opponents, like two people across the table, and you can try to still maybe enact an overall strategy despite the fact that your miniature can't see the other one through the woods or due to the weather or whatever conditions. If you use that mechanic and you follow that chart and that miniature can't see the other one, then you just make a decision, like when you're the solo war gamer, to act as if that wasn't even there, essentially, and then just let it play out. That would be kind of interesting too. And I think with some of the stuff Bill's saying is, like, you can layer tools from different rule sets, to potentially influence your game that you're choosing to play that day, which is kind of cool.
That's what I was just thinking, is that everybody here has a plethora of different systems that they played. And I can think of different mechanics and different games that would make pull something from this game, pull something from that game, and start creating an AI engine for each unit to have to go through a thought process to be able to do something.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're playing a skirmish game, say bolt action, or even Flames of War or something like that, where, right, this unit, let's say you got a table, it's like, all right, do spotting, right? They spot this unit over here. What's their action? They can either go to ground, go to cover, or fire on that target if they see it, type of thing. So anybody could start creating their own AI engine to be able to do these kind of things just by pulling stuff from other systems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a lot of discussion in the comments tonight, which is really
it's
cool.
blowing up so fast I can't even.
I don't know that I can get every comment like usual, but there's been a lot of discussion about games like Blood and Valor, and discussion about World War I gaming right now. And so, yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm trying to see, but there's also been some great comments just about the topic tonight too, mixed in there. I've tried to grab them as I've seen them come up. I've also seen Chris from Walkabout Games has joined us. Hello, Chris. And so, yeah. And so got a lot of people in the house tonight. Looks like Victor from Vix Miniatures. I'm just grabbing one here that I just see. It says, I try to attempt certain strategies for both sides and see how far you can push them before you have to react to the other side. So that's interesting. Like, you could play both sides with a strategy and see how far you can enact that strategy before you need to change it due to what's happening in the game, is the way I interpret that.
Yeah.
And that makes sense. So
that's kind of like what I said, where you start creating kind of an AI engine for yourself by pulling stuff from different systems to give try to create a thought process for the unit that's doing the actions.
Todd says, Vic, I've done that before. I think of a strategy and loosely write out orders and try to stick with those as much as possible. That's a good point, because there are games that utilize writing something down, as part of it, even when you have another opponent. Infinity does that, like, to some degree, like with who's your lieutenant and where are you dropping in with, let's say, an airborne type of unit. What was your plan to do when you started? I wonder, that's actually a useful tool, is to kind of just write out a bit of a strategy that you hold yourself to a bit.
Yeah, it's like when you think about the orders, the aide runs up, the messenger hands the orders to the soldier, that's of the head of the brigade that's sitting there, and goes, all right, your orders are charge the guns.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see guns over there. Let's go charge them. So they go charge the guns. When the general meant those guns over there, type of thing. So, and it made a very interesting song by Iron Maiden, but
so I don't know. I'm kind of interested in this Blood and Valor game that's being talked about a lot. I don't know if someone's able to just
Firelock. Is that the Firelock Games game?
Well, when Derek was responding to, I think, perhaps Pibecus and others that were talking about Blood and Valor, he'd mentioned Blood and Plunder and Blood and Valor, and I don't know if there's a relation there, because I know I'm familiar with Blood and Plunder.
Firelock Games came out, I think it is Blood and Plunder. That's their World War I game system.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you have? That's the Blood and Plunder, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm familiar with that one, because I know you had miniatures for that, Rusty, and you were talking about it. Derek also mentions Twilight, Archworld, and Tribal all have solo rules, Caveman versus Wild, and solo or co-op. And I've got a pile of GMT board games and are all highly soloable. So I'm pretty well covered for solo games. It sounds like it. That's like 5 or 6 just right off there, the bat.
Derek Kinsman said it is Firelock Games. Okay, yeah.
Okay, so it is Firelock Games then.
I haven't had any experience with that system yet. I have to talk to Alex and see get some word about it myself.
Mm-hmm. Paul Pibecus says Fantasy Flight Games have an app to use with Star Wars Legion for solo play. Never used it, but it sounds good. That might be interesting to try, because I think Legion is their sort of infantry-based game as compared to the Armada or the X-Wing. Yeah.
Paul said that he got the Blood and Valor uses the same mechanics as Blood and Plunder. So if you know Blood and Plunder, then you pretty much know how to play Blood and Valor. All right.
Yeah. Curtis says that GDB has a great order system that can be adopted for any set of rules. That's Generals to Brigade, right? You're referring to facilitate solo gaming.
Well, I used to play World War I gaming before it was cool. It was with the Warhammer Historicals Great War game.
Mm-hmm.
So I got rid of all my World War I miniatures, so I'm looking at the Blood and Valor going, maybe I'll collect a different army this time.
Another reason to build another army. I know that, speaking of Fantasy Flights, one of my friends recently sent me a link to that they have some Star Wars Armada solo rules as well, which I love that, and I should really do that, because I love that. That's my favorite Fantasy Flight game that I play, is the Armada game, and that'd be neat to try. Big ship battles with solo rules would be cool.
I never did get into playing the Games Workshop was it the Great War? Is that what they called it?
Yeah, it's the Great War. It's basically Warhammer 40K set in 1914.
So no different then.
It was pretty much 5th edition rules.
Yeah.
Maybe 4th edition. I got mixed up with because so many editions going by. It's crazy. So, but I think it was 4th edition rules of 40K that they emulated, but there were some nuances to it where they didn't have in 40K. Like you could saturate an area with machine gun fire, so you could actually do dropping machine gun fire, make it indirect, and of course, instead of being a heavy bolter of three rate of fire,
Plunging fire.
it was the heavy machine guns were rate of fire 8, which made them ridiculous on the table.
We got Hitter and Hobbyist Blitzkrieg Commander with its War Master roll for orders is good for solo wargaming. And Chris at Walkabout Games says the Great War was fun.
With the Blitzkrieg Commander, is that the 4th edition rules or is that the 3rd edition?
I'm not sure.
That's a dog?
Okay.
4th and 2nd, okay. All right. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I think I had the 3rd edition rules for Blitzkrieg Commander.
Yeah.
Okay.
War Master rules are good for solo gaming.
I got a copy of those someplace hidden on a shelf or in a box. I can't remember. I have to take a look. But
War Master is what Black Powder and Hail Caesar and Pike and Shout are based off of, aren't they?
yeah. Yeah, a lot of those are very similar. Long time.
I think Victor mentioned this earlier. He referenced this game, Pickett's Barrage, I believe, when in an earlier comment up above. For a long time, I used Pickett's Barrage for World War I, but that was for larger games, and now I use Great War Spearhead for my larger divisional size games. But I think he mentioned earlier that it's good for solo gaming.
You mean PK with the card system, where it tells you what units are activating and what they're doing in the activation?
Well, there's a whole bunch of rules. I got a set of rules that have a lot of different stuff, and it's actually a miniature game by the same name. I think that name it's been evolved over the years to different styles. Because I think my version I picked up in like 93, 94. Back when we actually had a gaming club around here.
I never got to play that game. At that
PK,
time I was playing Colonial Wargaming, so didn't really mash up with what I was doing.
I think I've been corrected twice now in my pronunciation.
Later, Derek.
It's PK, not Pickett, Palmer. Yeah, it looks like Derek had to take off. Cheers, Derek. Paul says, my other World War I miniature game is Square Bashing 15 mil by Peter Pick Miniatures. And
I think that's the whole thing is that, here we're starting to look at all the different systems out there that have some type of component that can be used to help facilitate the playing of different kinds of solo wargaming.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, you were part of the same club there, Mel. MIA, Mid-Iowa Wargamers.
Oh, wow.
Rusty, did you ever get interested with some of the rules that you developed, any of the AI mechanics at all, or?
About the only mechanic we used was actually we had a scenario generator.
Mm-hmm.
So with a couple, you like to roll this die, get to go down this chart, and then roll another die, you end up in this chart, and another die. And it's like, oh, there's your mission statement that you have, and then what type of forces you're going to have.
Right.
And sometimes it could be really out of balance, but that's war.
And that could be. Well, that's kind of an interesting point too. I mean, we've kind of touched on that in the discussion tonight, but you could almost. We talked about rolling ahead of time or writing down ahead of time your orders or your plan, but you could almost also incorporate some randomized AI mechanics at the very beginning of the game. And so rather than just saying, like, you could either take control of it narratively and say, well, these are the British and like they would have wanted in this scenario to do this, and you could write it that way. Or you could just say, this is Army A, this is Army B in this sort of genre, and these are your things that you're going to try to roll on to try to achieve or do. Which is kind of, yeah, that would be an interesting way. And then you could almost make the argument that you'll set the terrain of the table up to fit the two sides and the two objectives for each side that are rolled off. That would be kind of an interesting way to try it.
Yeah. With the scenario generator that we had in our system, you could roll, and then one side could be they have this mission that they're trying to perform, which is totally opposite, or this mission on the one side is like, our job is just to get off the board, and then your mission may be, I'm going to take that hill. And it's like, you might end up with a media engagement with different objectives, and it's like, well, you guys go ahead and go on that hill, we're going to go over here. And then you realize that, oh, to win I have to stop you from getting off the board, but I still got to take that hill.
Right.
And
Bill, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, there's an old wargaming World War II system called Spearhead. And in that system, it's just like you said, Palmer. Before the game begins, you have a written map of the table. And you actually literally draw your orders for your units before the game begins. And when the game begins, usually it's hard to change your orders mid-game. So depending on what units they are, if they're Soviets, they just follow the orders regardless. If they're Germans, they can be a little more fluid. But I can see how you could actually pre-program it, but the problem is you'd know the program of your opponent.
Right. But if you're plate representing both, then in some ways it isn't just the opponent. It's like you're the opponent both times.
Yeah,
it's interesting. There still always has to be a bit of a mindset that has to develop, right? Like the solo war game.
Yeah.
Like no matter what you do to try to facilitate it and make it easier for your mind to rationalize what you should be doing, you still have to have some mindset that you develop on rationalizing how you're going to do this. Seems like.
Yeah.
That might seem really, I guess, a general statement. But I mean, are you going to be a bit more narrative and be a bit more forgiving about the whole thing? Or are you going to be like kind of have a lot of hangups and want to be as competitive as possible and rationalize at every moment how you can maintain that, or just how to do it? It still requires a sort of a philosophy that you're going to start with. It seems like.
Yeah, Curtis had a good statement right here at the very bottom.
Says,
in the creative days. Up. There you go.
In my more creative days, I wrote up a solo system where you played a war correspondent or a battle chronicler. You didn't actually play a side in a battle, although you could favor one. I think you said favor one side over the other.
Yeah. You're just the facilitator of writing down the information, what's happening. So.
Up here, I'm just going to skip around here. Paul says you could use square bashing as a solo game as it uses a grid system. So I guess structuring your table, actually helps, I guess, in certain situations. It sounds like. And we're talking about, actually, Chris and Paul talk about To the Strongest.
I haven't heard
as
of
being
that
good games.
I haven't heard of that one.
I've heard of it, but I don't know a whole lot about it. When Bill says I was an I-95 gamer, that just makes me think of Interstate 95 along the East Coast. I'm not sure. What are you referring to with I-95?
Yep, that's right.
Is it Interstate 95 you're talking about?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. What do you mean when you say you're an I-95 gamer?
Folks, you guys are talking about the Midwest gamers. There's a group of gamers along I-95.
Oh, okay. Growing up in New York, I know I-95. I'm very far from it now, but that's what I think of when you say I-95.
I'm gonna say I'm just thinking to myself, where's I-95 at?
I've driven that down from New York to Florida.
Yeah.
Actually,
DC, if you haven't told.
Sorry?
I'm from DC.
Oh, okay. There you go. Yep. Yeah. So, Chris says that he ordered Mars today. Mars is an abbreviation. I'm kind of at a loss here at the moment. Do you guys know what that is? Chris, you're gonna have to jump in on that one. I should know it. I probably should know it, but I don't know the abbreviation at this moment.
Having a brain block.
Oh, the resin printer. The resin printer. Okay, cool. To be honest, I've not really looked into the resin printers as much. I've got my filament one, but I do envy you on what you're going to be able to do with a resin printer. But I've not actually researched heavily in getting one. But gosh, I can imagine the barrels that you put up on the internet today. I can imagine some of the stuff you're going to be able to do with a resin one. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I say most of my experience from eyes go from basically Indianapolis to Denver. You know.
Yeah.
It's pretty much from I-70 to I-80. That corridor.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, yeah, no, this was an interesting topic. We actually had a lot of discussion tonight. So thanks, Bill, for suggesting this one.
Yeah.
It's generated a lot of conversation. We are kind of heading towards the end of our program. Looks like Paul's jumping off. Thanks very much for joining us. And we are getting ready to go. We do have a bit of an announcement just for a project we're doing. I know a number of folks in the actual chat room, as well as Bill himself, have joined us in the past for Old Hammer challenges. And we are looking at doing we're not quite in May yet, but we are looking at doing a Musty Wargamers Old Hammer challenge for anybody that's interested in joining again or for the first time. Those of you either watching now live or later. Basically, the Old Hammer challenges, we're not too snobbish about them in the sense that a lot of people consider Old Hammer to be basically like kind of GW miniatures that are set in the late 80s to a certain year in the early 90s. We just basically say old stuff that you have, whether it be historical or fantasy, just stuff that you want to take out of your closet and just jump in. Like I do a lot of the Old Hammer, projects, from like those GW models, but really it can be anything, that's just old kind of style miniatures that you just haven't painted up that you'd like to pull out and play. And in particular, if you do have some of those old GW models, the Old Hammer models, absolutely join in with those. Those are totally fitting. We'll do individual videos. I know Rusty and I both have projects, I believe, in mind, and we'll do individual videos in the future to announce that, but we're looking at doing that in the month of May. For those of you that don't know, we do have a Facebook page, the Musty Wargamers, where we do put up just kind of stuff we're doing lately, like on our hobby vlogs, and then also we do in our YouTube video channels, and also we put up just our old pictures of our stuff we're doing when we do an Old Hammer challenge. So feel free to join in, and it lets you know when the next show is going to be coming up as well.
Yeah, it's like Dan here. He just comment he put up. Definitely, it's like if you had some old Bretonians. I think I have still got a bunch of orcs, Eldar, and just for 40K. Now I have a bunch of fancy stuff I could probably delve into.
Mm-hmm.
Like my elves, high elves. I think I could probably finish painting a bunch of those up for. So I got a lot of options to pull from Games Workshop stuff.
I've got way too many options.
I have to use Games Workshop stuff.
I've got way too many things that are unpainted that I need to do. But also, what I was going to say is, even though there's a number of folks on the Facebook page that are really into like the actual early old Hammer GW models, and may potentially join for that. Like Bill, you had some cool old samurai models that you had done in the last one. So like there's lots of cool stuff that people can do. Ralpartha, old historical, anything, that you guys want to do.
Yeah, I have an old Warhammer Ancient Battles army that I had shelved, and I had painted half of it. Who knows? I might actually dig that out and paint it.
Yeah, even just grab a unit or some character models or something. Anything.
Yeah, because my wife, after our last game, she was telling me that I had a lack of female miniatures for gaming, and she wanted to do Boudica from the Celts. And so since I got a Gaul army that needs to get painted, I might as well get that finished.
There you go. That's awesome. All right.
Yeah, that's where, like you said, Vic just joined the Musty Wargamers group just now. So I just
sweet. Good.
So we just got a new member just now. So,
all right. Yeah. So
we're growing.
That's awesome. And we'll announce it on the page too for the folks that aren't on watching the video too, that are in the group. But yeah, it's just a fun thing. And so we'll be looking at doing that in May. The other thing too is we're actually pretty easy going on the timeline. It's not like you need to start on May 1st and end on like the very last day of May. Like some of us start beforehand, some start in the middle, some go over when they're not finished. It doesn't really matter. It's just sort of a time block, and that's all we do. So and so yeah, like don't, it's not something to stress about. It's just something to partake in as it suits you, and just have fun just sharing the stuff.
Yeah, that's something you can do, stuff like that. When it comes to timeline, some individuals I think went for go 6 weeks past the point when we said start. So there is no end date, just start. We just have the painting challenge just for picking something up that you haven't touched in forever and a day. And like me, I have miniatures that I bought back in the 90s that I can still go, hey, I can start painting them again.
My wife wants me to show off something I did for her recently.
Oh, sweet. Okay. Cool. Baby Yoda. All right. That looks really good.
Baby Yoda.
Yeah, it's a wooden piece that my sister-in-law had carved out out of a laser cutting tool.
I was going to say, it looks really sharp, like it was laser cut or something. Yeah, it looks nice.
And then I stained the robes with wood stain and painted the rest of it like with acrylics. So
that's cool.
Looks really good.
Another item for the wall.
Yep.
Awesome. Yep. Cool. Well, I think it's been a great show. I really appreciate Bill, you coming and joining us for a chat. And goes without saying, we say it all the time, but if people want to join and like, we do like sometimes our guests to choose one of the topics too, like something that fits or interests them with what they do as well. If you just want to join, we also come up with topics constantly. You don't have to do that. It's up to you. But anybody that would like to join for a future one, let us know. We do like having guests on the show. And yeah, thanks to everybody for joining in the chat. I think this may be one of those nights where you guys type faster than we spoke. I think that's actually possible because there's just so many comments, really great chat going on. And yeah, everybody, thanks for joining, and we will see you next time.
Yeah, the nice thing about having a guest is because when I freeze up, because being Mr. Freeze when I'm on the space station, Palmer has somebody to talk to while I'm coming back.
I've had to do some pretty interesting maneuvering when it was just me and you left.
Oh, boy.
All right, everybody. Guys. That's good night. I enjoyed all the chat as fast as I could read it.
Yeah.
So I think this is the best night we've had when it comes to the chat. So really enjoyable, guys.
Yeah, lots of fun.
Thanks for coming in.
Take care, everybody.
Good night.
Night, y'all.